Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Back Room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
Hello, everyone. This is Donald Trump. Hopefully your favorite president of all time, better than Lincoln, better than Washington, with an important announcement to make. I'm doing my first official Donald J. Trump NFT collection right here and right now. They're called Trump Digital Trading Cards. These cards feature some of the really incredible artwork pertaining to my life and my career. It's been very exciting. You can collect your Trump digital cards just like a baseball card or other collectibles. Here's one of the best parts. Each card comes with an automatic chance to win amazing prizes like dinner with me. I don't know if that's an amazing prize, but it's what we have. Or golf with you and a group of your friends at one of my beautiful golf courses, and they are beautiful. I'm also doing Zoom calls, a one-on-one meeting, autographing memorabilia, and so much more. We're doing a lot.
As you can hear, the 2024 presidential campaign officially kicked off yesterday with Trump's first policy position. I mean, is this nuts, the trading cards? This is crazy. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, it gets crazier.
The only part that was missing is the throwing in of a free peeler if you order now.
It slices
Pope
and
peel.
dices.
The Pope peel. It slices, it dices. Pertaining to my life and my career, I'm sorry, when was Trump an astronaut or a cowboy sheriff or a NASCAR driver or a football coach or a Top Gun fighter pilot? Did I miss that?
I also missed the laser beams coming out of his eyes.
But that was the best part. That was actually the best part, I think, because the rest of the photoshopping was horrendous. Looked like something I would do. I also love the part where he's like, and the most amazing part is, you get to go to dinner with me. And then he like counters that. Like he criticizes his own amazing deal by saying something like, well, I don't know how amazing that would be, actually.
The only true statement he made.
Yeah. And so, but it's all bonkers. It's nothing but a grift. It's always been a grift. His brainwashed base is just, they're too brain dead to realize that all this guy gives a shit about is taking their money, just like he did with the Stop the Steal, legal defense campaign, $100 million. Where'd that money go? It didn't go to anything. It didn't go to candidates. It went in his pocket. It's unbelievable. People like Steve Bannon, Flynn, the New York Post, which said, don't give any money to con artist Trump. He's gotten so many people to come out in the last 24 hours criticizing this as the worst move ever, especially at this particular time.
And nothing's actually changed with him. It's just that he's not winning for them, so now they're turning on him. But if he was winning with this message, they'd be fine with it.
Yeah. And, the crazy thing is like, if we recall decades ago when Mike Dukakis put on a helmet and sat in a tank, well, what did that do? It tanked his campaign, right? Now, the first time this guy speaks to his base as a presidential candidate, it's to sell $99 digital trading cards. Like he clearly has there's nothing there. But it is interesting to see the power elites, if you will, the donors and the Bannons and all those. It does look like he's a wounded animal, and they're moving away from him.
Yes, but if he does win the primary, they will be giving him billions of dollars.
Yeah, never, ever count this man out.
No,
ever.
No. But, there is the polls that came out in the last few days, he is at the worst levels he's ever been at. The head-to-head matchups with Biden and DeSantis, he's losing big. There's anywhere from 60 to 70%, depending on which poll you look at, 60 to 70% of the Republican base that does not want him running again. Jen, you're 100% right, but I do feel like something's different now. And when you can throw in all the investigations and the legal troubles that he has and the likelihood that he's going to get indicted, 17 counts of fraud that the Trump org, like the business troubles he has, it just seems like the walls are not closing in on him, that they're actually crumbling on him. But you're right. He's been Teflon before up until now. And, who knows? The Meadows text that came out, I think, is also a big problem for him because it shows that there was a literal vast right-wing conspiracy to steal the election and overthrow the government and keep him in the Oval Office. And so January 6th committee has its last hearing on Monday. They're going to vote on criminal referrals to the Justice Department. They're also going to issue their final report on Wednesday. And that's just another straw that might be breaking this camel's back finally.
Yeah, I think when historians look back, it is possible that the NFT trading cards are the moment he jumped the shark.
Yeah. And before we move on to the next subject, I do want to say that comically, we are still following the rankings of the podcast overseas. We are this week number 5 in Barbados and Finland. And we're still ranking pretty high in Russia. I'm not sure why, but so we'll keep following that.
Important numbers.
Yes. Let's talk about DeSantis for a second, because right now in Florida, he's moving to impanel a grand jury to investigate the wonderful world of COVID vaccinations. He's on a rampage now against manufacturers and executives of those companies and any entity that was in charge of disseminating information, because he feels that the COVID vaccines cause myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart. And he wants to get to the bottom of it. And you would think that, with this effort that's happening right now with DeSantis, that was always his position, that he always felt that there's something wrong with the vaccine. So let's go to the tape and see what he had to say early on.
Today is the day we're going to hit our 2 million senior vaccinated, and I couldn't think of a better fella to be able to have that honor. So I think we have the Pfizer vaccine ready to go. I had also the privilege to be able to actually sign for the vaccines from FedEx. It's a single dose. You take it one time. You don't have to worry about it. Florida, to be at almost 50% statewide, that's much better than almost probably 45 or 46 other states. And we're going to give them more because we want the shots to go in the arms.
Versus what? The butts? It's like, okay. That was DeSantis, I guess about a year and a half ago, when he was for the vaccines, before he was against the vaccines. But of course now he's contemplating a run for the presidency, and he's not going to win the presidency unless he wins the crazy, brainwashed Trump crowd, the cultists, all the culture war people, and that's all this is. It's kind of shocking, actually, because it's so blatant and shameless to flip-flop that way when he previously had taken so much credit for it. But we're going to see a lot more of that, I'm sure, as this campaign unfolds. This brings us to our favorite segment of the opening part of our podcast, which is Maddie's update and rant on our favorite company and chief twit, Elon Musk.
Yeah, so I think this week what we learned, what we already knew, but we relearned, is that Musk is anything but pro-speech. He's pro-Musk. And essentially what he did is to first throw off a Twitter user. He suspended their account of Jack Sweeney, who basically tweeted automatically everywhere that Elon Musk's private plane was, his Gulfstream. That wasn't enough. He then had to go after the journalists that were covering Jack Sweeney. And so he suspended 7 journalists yesterday, including someone named Aaron Rupert, who I want to give a shout out to because he has a great Substack called Public Notice, and people should subscribe to it. But of course you can't get rid of someone who's providing public information, because immediately this person went to Mastodon, and as of this morning has 42,000 followers tusking all of Elon Musk's plane locations. So basically he is out of control, which is what we kind of knew before, but now he's showing that he has absolutely no interest in free speech. And he's going to just keep suspending journalists who cover news he doesn't like.
He suspended Donny O'Sullivan.
Yep.
Have you ever seen Donny O'Sullivan? He's like a cuddly little teddy bear who just speaks the truth. That's his job, is to kind of fact check and report the truth. He's also, in the last 24 hours, he's picked a fight with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I tweeted to him and I said, dude, do not take on AOC. She will destroy you.
Yeah, but his base is anti-AOC, so it's perfect for him.
That's fine, but he cannot match wits with AOC. She's too smart and too quick.
Nope.
And too biting. And he's, his response to her was something like, you first, or, oh yeah. It was the equivalent of, I know you are, but what am I? It was so stupid and juvenile, because that's what he is right now. But
and he's destroying Tesla too, by the way. Let's just put that in.
And his own wealth. It's just, he's a fucking narcissist billionaire who everybody licked his ass for how many years, told him he's the smartest motherfucker in the room, right? And now he's believing the hype.
It seems to me that everybody should start tweeting about his Gulfstream with the tail number N628TS. That's N628TS. And make sure you tweet exactly where the plane is, because you can find that information all over the internet on multiple plane trackers.
My personal feeling, I want to say this, my personal feeling is that kind of, I get that there could be the perception of a safety risk in that stuff. I'm fine with that. I think we've gotten to a place in this country where anything is okay. And there's certain things that I think should be off limits. However, it just depends on who it is and it involves, what that person is doing. You know, when the person who is claiming, safety issues, I can't allow this to happen, blah, blah, blah. When he's the one who's spreading conspiracies about Paul Pelosi or saying, my pronouns are indict Fauci, like when he's inciting what he knows is hatred and potential acts of violence against someone like Fauci, who's had to get bodyguards because of death threats, that guy doesn't deserve the concern about flight safety.
No, he likes punching down. And his former head of safety and security, Yoel Roth, he accused of being a pedophile. And so Yoel Roth had to leave his home. Yeah. He is no longer able to stay in his house. He doesn't have federal security guards like Fauci does.
Well, I have this theory. It's kind of sci-fi-ish. It may make me seem crazy right now, but it may be proven true in about a year. And that is, first of all, have you ever seen Trump and Musk in the same room together at the same time? Right? We haven't. We've seen Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. We've seen Musk with Jeffrey Epstein. But we've never seen Trump and Musk in the same room. So as Trump is about to fade from the political earth, I feel like there's some vaporization thing happening, like through osmosis. The essence, the soul, if he has one or whatever's left of it, of Trump is kind of shifting into, and those of you who can't see me right now, I'm moving my hands in a very shifting kind of way. He's transitioning so that as Trump is going to be gone, but then we'll have him in Musk. Because if you notice, everything Musk does is exactly what we hate about Trump. It's literally, you could take everything, every tweet, every statement, every complaint, everything, every insecurity, every single goddamn thing about Musk. Change the name from Musk to Trump, and it all applies. So that's my theory, kids. You laugh now. 2015, I said Trump was Hitler. Huffington Post wouldn't print my article.
So now, that means Elon Musk is going to run in 2024?
I don't know where it goes. I think that's the next, if this was a TV series, I'm only into episode 2. Where episodes 3 through 8 go, I don't know, but I do know that I've never seen Trump and Musk in the same.
This is an awful.
I want to leave it on that.
This is an awful version of Stranger Things.
Exactly. Nice. Well, we will close on that and very excitedly bring out our guest, Jennifer Palmieri. She is a co-host of my favorite show, Showtime's The Circus, and the author of the #1 New York Times bestselling book, Dear Madam President, and the book She Proclaims, Our Declaration of Independence from a Man's World. She's a leading political and communications strategist, having served as President Obama's White House communications director. That was a cool job. And head of communications for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, an even cooler job. Prior to joining the Obama White House, she was president of the Center for American Progress Action Fund, the advocacy arm for a premier progressive think tank. She was also National Press Secretary for the Democratic Party, White House Deputy Press Secretary for President Bill Clinton, another cool job, and National Press Secretary for the 2004 John Edwards for President campaign. I don't know how cool that job was, but
good hair.
Maybe yes. Well, we got 2 Americas out of that, so that was important. So very excited to bring her in. Jennifer, welcome into the back room.
Good to be with you, Andy. Thanks for having me.
So we in the back room like to try to get a window into people's souls. And so before we get into the heavier conversations, so one of the ways we do that is we ask 2 questions, one at the beginning, one at the end. The first one is, are you a dog or a cat person?
Oh, I'm a dog person.
You said that quick and emphatically.
I did, yeah.
So no cats ever?
We had a cat when I was growing up. We had a stray that came in. I think we were living in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and we had a stray that came into our life. And she stayed. My dad was in the Navy. She stayed with us for 2 moves. She had epilepsy, poor thing. Yeah, a lot of care went into that cat, and eventually kind of walked away from us when she was very old in California. 2 moves later, so. We also had 2 dogs at the time, but yeah, very much a dog person.
Okay. We had your circus pal Tim on here a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Oh my God, I pretty much hate both." So.
hilarious.
He's like, they just all they do is like take, and they cause trouble, and like, nope. I'll go.
my
He said, I'll go to a
God,
zoo
that
if I want to
makes
see animals. I'll go to a zoo.
that makes me so sad for him. Doesn't see all the love that puppies bring.
Yeah, well, he was being honest.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about Mississippi in a second, but I just want to say I love the Circus. It is my favorite
Yay.
show on television. I have a teenage daughter, and she often watches it with me, and I drive her crazy because I pretend that I'm in the show. That's how much I love it. So, like at the beginning, when all you guys are meeting at the restaurant, I'm like, "Hey, I'm not feeling well. Like, I'm working from home tonight, but I hope." And she's like, "Dad, you know how you can always get a teenager? They're like, Dad, you don't know these people." And I'm like, no, I do. It's just like, I can't be the truth. They're not your friends. They don't know you. But it is an amazing show. Such an amazing show. It just, everything about it is great, and I love watching it. And
Thank you. I'm super proud. I mean, it is like, I feel super lucky to be part of it, super proud of the product. And everybody who works on that show is like the best in the world at what they do. And it would never work if that were not true. And like super grateful. People keep coming back. It's very hard to do, but I think just about everybody who works on the show loves it and is really proud of it.
Well, I'm going to make a shameless pitch. I happen to be a partner in the candy store in Rhinebeck, New York. If you guys ever want to have your little opening show,
this is an excellent
chat,
idea.
in a candy store in Rhinebeck, you let me know.
Also, and by the way, the Hudson Valley is now a battleground. So
yeah, it's it is
legit...
Pat Ryan, our congressman. So he's our guy.
Yeah. There's a legit political reason to be going there. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So if you ever want to do it, just let me know. Mississippi. I mean, you are such a strong Democratic force. You've worked your life in politics as a Democratic strategist. Mississippi, not known as a bastion of Democratic politics. What was it like growing up there? I'm curious about your family, what affiliation they had, and like at what moment did the young Jennifer in Mississippi go, check please, this is not where my politics are?
So that didn't so the way that all came up, so my dad was in the Navy, and I'm the youngest of four, and we were stationed. I was born in Pascagoula, when the Mississippi, it's on the Gulf Coast. So I was born there and lived there until I was 3. Moved away for a couple of years, came back, and stayed there until I was 8. And my parents actually, both who are from the Northeast. My dad was born in the Bronx, grew up in Westchester County. He grew up in Larchmont, went to Mamaroneck High School.
Oh, wow.
And my mom is from the North Shore of Boston, Swampscott. And so they're, very New England. But they actually bought a house. My dad was going to retire from the Navy, and we were going to stay there. And went back there for that purpose of thinking that was going to be our permanent residence. And they were my parents were very surprised to like it. But it is I'm still friends with people from Pascagoula. They are definitely all Republicans. Not all necessarily Trump Republicans, but it is it's just kind of walled off from the rest of not other southeastern states, but it's kind of walled off politically from the rest of the country, partly because Democrats just haven't invested a lot there. It's really kind of an abomination. I think there's it's the poorest state in the country. It has one of the, if not the highest African American populations in the country. And I think that, you really, Democrats care about the lives of people living in poverty. We should be spending more money and time in Mississippi. But we went to California after that. We were in South Carolina for a couple of years and moved to California. And I was lucky to go to high school in Santa Cruz County. And Leon Panetta was my congressman. And when I was in college, I went to college at American University. I started interning for Leon. And that was when I became a Democrat, was working for him. And just, he was just, I'm just so lucky, like, talk about a model public servant. Someone who served in Congress, 2 presidential administrations, CIA, Secretary of Defense. And it was that time I just saw I felt like Democrats were the ones that solved the problems. Democrats were the ones that weren't satisfied with things the way they were. Democrats were the ones that were like challenging to make things better. And that's what I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. And when was it that I guess went through college or whatever? At what point did you decide politics is for me? I want to be in this game?
In Pascagoula, actually, because one of my mother's closest friends, her name was Ann Webb, and her husband, Davis Webb, was campaign manager for Trent Lott's first congressional race. And Trent had been a Democrat working for William Colmer, who was the local congressman, who was also a Democrat. And Trent, so this was like I think it was a special election. It might have been like 73. It was either 72 or 73. I had the sense that I think Colmer died in office and Lott ran to succeed him. So either 72 or 73. And Trent at that point, in like what became a trend, switched parties to run as a Republican, and at that point, Republicans, left over from the days of Lincoln, the Republican Party was not popular, was, still not that popular in the South. You had a lot of Dixiecrats, the Democrats, the conservative Democrats that were conservative Southerners that were Democrats. And my mother volunteered on his campaign. And the campaign headquarters was a double-wide trailer in the Rexall drugstore parking lot. The Rexall drugstore in Pascagoula was like the center of town. It was beautiful, one of those neat old-fashioned pharmacies with like a soda fountain and like hardwood floors. And actually, it's funny, Trent Lott used to talk about like how he would go there to see what's on people's minds. This is later as a senator, and he would talk about how people at the Rexall drugstore in Pascagoula were against the death tax. And Jackie Calms was at the Wall Street Journal at that point, was like, bullshit. They're talking about that, and convinced the Wall Street Journal to let her go to Pascagoula to spend a day at the Rexall drugstore and see if in fact they were talking about the death tax at the soda fountain there, and they were not, she found. But it was the campaign at first was a double wide trailer there, and my mom was the volunteer coordinator, and she put me in like a Trent Lott sandwich board and like would put me out in front of Jerry Lee's supermarket to pass out pamphlets, have me and my sisters and friends like knock on people's doors. And so I started liking politics then. And Lott, when he got to Congress, was part of, I think he was on Judiciary Committee. He may have been on the impeachment committee, but at any rate, either way, he had to take a stand early on, got involved early on impeachment of Nixon and Watergate. And that got me very interested in Watergate. And I read All the President's Men when I was 10 and hooked on politics ever since. Yeah. And when I worked for Leon Panetta, when he was White House Chief of Staff, I was Leon's assistant in the Chief of Staff's office. And there was one of the government shutdowns happening. And Lott was the Senate Majority Leader. And he called to talk to Leon. And so I go to tell him, Lott's on the phone, and he's like, no, like I can't deal with him right now, So I was like, Senator, Leon's not available. Can I have a call you back? He's like, well, I'll just hold. I was like, oh boy. So I went into Leon. I was like, isn't that such a power move?
Yeah, no, it's so funny. Like the little kids.
Senate Majority Leader.
Yeah, no. Look, it's not a surprise given the career you've had. I mean, those childhood moments are what shapes us as, this may come as a shock to people, but when I was like 8 years old, maybe, let's see, I was born in 59. Nixon was 68. So yeah, about 9 years old. I was hanging out at his, local campaign office, and I was getting buttons and passing them out. I was like 9 years old, and stumping for Nixon. Like I look back on that now, cool. And then I got to meet him in an airport once, and that was a big thrill. But I think if you're obsessed with politics at that age, like you were, you kind of have to end up on some level in that world, because that you can't repress that stuff. Like you're either interested in that,
I just always
and it doesn't go away.
It was what I was going to do. Yeah, always what I was going to do. Yeah.
So you've worked on some amazing.
He was very disappointed to learn that I had become a I would had to entertain him on the phone, and so I was like, "Well, Senator, I actually know you because my mom and I lived in Pascagoula. My mom worked on your first campaign, and I have photos of us together on Halloween in my Trent Lott sandwich board." And he's like, "What happened to you that you went so far astray?" I was like, "Well,
I found Jesus is what
Senator,
happened to me."
We moved to California, and I started working for Leon, and that's how he's like, "Oh, well, Leon's a good guy."
Well, so, you've worked on some amazing campaigns. You worked for Bill Clinton, Obama, but the one that fascinates me the most, and I think fascinates a lot of people from various perspectives, is your involvement with Hillary in 2016. Before I ask any questions, I just want to go on record and say I was firmly with her. I am still with her. I would lay down in traffic for her if she ever ran again. Yeah. But I think because of that, I share a lot of frustration that a lot of Hillary people did and still have, because she was not just probably the most qualified candidate in history, but she probably would have gone on to become one of the greatest presidents in history. And through a crazy confluence of things that happened, she didn't become president. That glass ceiling never was shattered. And I think I've read somewhere that you've said that everyone from white supremacists within the Trump campaign and the email scandal, Comey, political journalists, also the media. I believe sexism had a huge part of that. Bernie Sanders, I think, so I blame all of it. But I want to ask you, what do you say to folks like me who also say, on some level, I think we'd have to hold, the candidate a little accountable too. What looking back, what could have been done differently that would have addressed some of the concerns? Like, I live in Manhattan. I spoke to a lot of Upper West Side women who didn't like Hillary.
Let me guess.
A phenomenon.
Let me stop you. They said, you know what? There's just something about her I don't like.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's what is that thing? But the opposite is true of
gender.
Bill.
That is gender. And it doesn't mean, this is what I came into. I walked into that campaign not thinking it was that big of a deal or going to be hard to elect the first woman president. Right? We had elected the first Black president. And given our history with race in this country, I thought that was a far harder thing. I was and I wasn't even motivated to be on that campaign to elect the first woman president. I just thought Hillary was the best person for the job. I'd been working in politics for, 20 years at that point. And all of a sudden, none of the controls worked the same. And I felt like I'd been driving a bus for 20 years. And all of a sudden I got in a new bus and the brakes didn't work. Or when you pressed on the accelerator, you I was like, what is happening? And we just kept walking into buzzsaw after buzzsaw after buzzsaw. And I think that gender was at the root of it, or I guess to be more precise and generous to all of us. It was change was at the root of that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it means that everybody, including the women that you're talking about on the Upper West Side or wherever you said, is sexist or doesn't want women to succeed. It's just not something we recognize, right? We recognize male politicians, male candidates right away. Look at, for example, how Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke, both who I know a little bit, are really great guys, really talented public servants, just awesome. But how right away, and neither one of them became president, but right away we get it, we see it, we people are excited about their candidacies, these young promising men, and it's because we have seen their story play out time and time again. They remind us of RFK. They remind us of JFK. They remind us of a young Bill Clinton, you know. And so it all makes sense to us. And I think when you see, even with as much as far as progress as women have made in the world, it's still a radical idea in the scope of human history for a woman to be in charge and to be in charge of this country in particular. And Hillary, even though like she's been around for, I think part of the problem was she'd been around for so long, was so much part of the establishment. It was hard to see her as something exciting and new. But at the same time, she has always, from the time she first came to the public's attention, which was as an undergrad, and she was on the cover of Life magazine from this very provocative, very, very provocative speech she gave at commencement at Wellesley. She's been someone who sort of stepped outside of the norm, the box that women have normally been in. She didn't change her name when she married Bill Clinton. She was a lawyer. She made more money than her husband. She was a first lady in the West Wing who got involved in politics. She was a first lady who ran for the Senate. And it's like, even though it sounds like stuff that we're all happy for a woman to see do, it's just a little vexing. It's a little different. It's a little confounding. Does it make sense to us? There's just something about it we don't like, and we can't quite put our finger on it because we just don't like recognize it. And so that, I think Hillary was not a perfect candidate. She doesn't like, you know, that is not, she likes the governing side. Some people love the campaigning side. She likes the governing side more. You know, her husband is like better at this than she is. Barack Obama is better at that part of it than she is. She readily admits those. Any other person would have survived what she, you know, the flaws of the candidate, right? But I think it was just too, and we almost made it, right? We very nearly almost made it. We very nearly almost elected a woman, even with all of this stuff coming at us. But, and I don't think it's possible really to go back and say, well, if we had done X, Y, or Z differently, it would have been different. When you lose by so little, that's everything, right? But I also think that we now, after we look at women candidates, after what she went through, the result, our perspective has really changed. And what's possible now for women candidates just wasn't possible then.
Yeah, you mentioned the X factor thing that naturally came to Bill and naturally came to Obama, and there's always been the criticism that she doesn't have that in a room full of people, she's magic, she's unbelievable, but that doesn't come across on TV, and I think we've now learned from 45 that's what a lot of people, even on the Democratic side, that telegenic quality is so important. It started with Kennedy, I guess, but
well, I think it's true for all of human history. People gravitate towards leaders they relate to, and they gravitate towards leaders they want to be like and be with. Saying like, I can't believe that we want to elect our leaders by saying who we want to have a beer with. That is what we do. Okay, like, stop fighting it. That is what we do. And I think it's because we want let's get underneath that. Like, what's in that? What is in that is someone who respects me, right? Because you're going to sit down and have a beer with somebody that, you're not going to sit down and have a beer with somebody you don't respects me, relates to me, cares enough about me, and is like just fun to be around, right? So we look, particularly in America, where we don't have royalty, we look for ourselves to be reflected in our leaders. And I think that's why that kind of X factor is so important.
And what about there was criticism that she didn't visit certain states, certain states enough. Like, if you could turn the clock back, because there's always things you could change, is there something in particular that you'd say, we would have changed that? I know it's hard to be self-critical, and I'm putting you on the spot, but
no, I refuse. Frankly, I kind of refuse to be critical, because what people don't understand is, why do you think going more to Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania would have helped? right?
Yeah, I'm not saying I personally believe that, but that's
no,
been
but I'm just like, why? Yeah, it's like we went to Pennsylvania constantly.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a ton of time in Pennsylvania. The two states we went to the most were Pennsylvania and Florida, I believe. And we lost Pennsylvania by 6 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, it's fodder for the opposition.
Right?
So
it's like it is. But what people misunderstand is assuming that going somewhere means you're going to do better.
Right. Well, in politics, as you know, there's a lot of assumptions that if you do this.
Right. So for people like this is something useful for people to know. Like when I worked in Ohio for John Kerry in 2004, whenever he came, numbers went down.
Mm-hmm.
So we sent John Edwards to that state, not John Kerry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just look at the midterms.
Right.
The places, if you keep Trump away,
right,
you'll do better.
So it's like, I don't like to put a thing. I mean, it's 6 years ago, so I get asked this question all the time, and I don't like to answer it with a specific thing like, because with a specific easy answer that kind of lets the rest of it off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just don't believe elections are that way. I kind of think they are going to be what they are going to be. And to suggest that there was one thing you could do differently kind of discounts how alienated, angry people in America felt at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like one of my huge takeaways from that election was you can't sit in a pollster's laboratory or a focus group, or focus group moderator's laboratory or a cable set in New York or Washington or at the DNC or at the RNC and think that you can control what people want, believe, and think. Like, you can't do that. Americans are smart. They're going to think and believe and desire what it is that they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so the country, I mean, I'll tell you, like when we were out, even as early as 15, you could feel like something different was happening. And like there was a anger, roiling, reckoning across the board, all demographics, mostly lower incomes, but just like all over the country. And I felt like our campaign and the Trump campaign, sort of ironically, were the first to see it. They were able to tap into it. By the time a presidential campaign gets to a place like that, either you're the thing that they want or you're not. And it's going to be too late to kind of address it, which is why too late. I remember in particular, we went to Western Pennsylvania, went to Johnstown, and just terrible, horrible lock her up protests, like everywhere we went. And, and I remember talking to Hillary about it and being like, because normally Hillary's great, but people she doesn't agree with. She goes and talks to people, kind of, listens, hears them out. She usually has good solutions. People like her personally, as you noted, like earlier, one-on-one. And I was like, these people, like, we can't talk to these people. They can't hear you. Like, it is way too late. It is a decade too late. Like they are in their, people, all of us, it's not to like blame the people of Johnstown. All of us are in our own bubbles. The time Fox News was a thing. They were just listening to Fox News. And, you can't, and then you're like, okay, so then we were in a situation of let's talk to the people who will listen to us, right? That's what you got to do. And made the best calls about, trying to talk to the people that would listen to us. And in the end, it wasn't enough.
Yeah. Well, look, that was a heartbreaking election. I mean, I like to play devil's advocate, but the truth is, as you say, there was so many tangible things that happened from the propaganda that Trump himself spread to the things you've cited in the past to the sexism and what Bernie did at the end, you know, his failure to throw in the towel because he found rock stardom that he'd never had in his career.
Yeah, but like I don't blame him. I don't blame him. And like he ran his race all the way to the end. That's like what you do in democracy. You know, like good for him. It just in the end ended. It ended up being too much, and any like one thing could have changed it, but
do you think the Comey thing could have changed it? I mean, that of all the
I think that would have if we had not like spent the last 11 days like cratering. I just could not believe. I was like, I can't believe we're spending the last 10 days talking about emails. Like
I can't imagine what it was like for you guys to just get to
Hillary
that point.
Wasn't surprised. She was not surprised. She was like, when I told her, she was like, she just kind of smiled and shook her head, and I was like, what? She's like, I knew we weren't done.
Well, vast right-wing conspiracy.
I knew. She's like, I knew we weren't done. Yeah, like I knew this wasn't going away.
Well, look, the truth is she won the popular vote.
But like, we won, but like all of that, but it's like, there's all of that stuff, but it's like the question, but it was not a normal, obviously it was not a normal election, well outside of anything having to do with Hillary or, you know, or gender. It was, you know, the country, you know, I think had to kind of go through this reckoning, and you know, every generation gets tested on democracy, and we are being tested in a really big way. She could have, you know, I do sometimes wonder if she had won, then what? Like, would we have avoided the sort of rupture that happened? Or was that always going to come, you know, like just delayed? You know,
I think it just would have been what it was, that America is ugly in many ways, but the ugliness often, and the ugly people often just live under a rock. I mean, Trump went and, you know, just lifted the rock and said, come on out, you know? But
I'm not sure if we could have kept the rock down. I don't know. I wonder about that a lot.
So speaking of Trump, I'm sure you spent all morning online buying your digital Trump cards.
Oh my God.
Is that the craziest thing you've ever seen? Like, it just never, there's no bottom to the insanity.
It's infuriating. It's infuriating to me to see stuff like that, and then to see Republicans now walk away from him. Like, I was like, it's that easy? It was that easy all along? You couldn't have, like, you're going to do that now? I mean, the NFT stuff is crazy, but it's not.
Not putting kids in cages, right? I mean, there's so many other things that people could have gotten upset with.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, to see like the New York Post turn against him, Fox News to some degree turn against him, and you know the Republican senators to say they're not sure he's right and it's like, it was this easy, you all. You made him as powerful as he became. You did that. You willed that into being, and it didn't have to happen, and it is just kind of wild and infuriating to see it.
Do you think he's done at this point? Because we've been there before with him.
We've been there before. He has not shown me anything in the last month to suggest that he's capable of putting himself on a comeback path. I went to a rally in Dayton the night before the election, you know, just in November, and he was, and he talked for 2 hours, and all he did was air his own grievances about how he's being treated, and the crowd was not into it. When he came on stage, right before he came on stage, they showed a video of Tish James, you know, in New York, the AG who has this, you know, lawsuit against his company, and talking about how she was racist, showing a video of her saying like, we're going to get that jackass. I think unfortunately there's footage, some kind of footage similar to that, close to what I just said, and stuff about the raid at Mar-a-Lago. there's air quotes, friends, about the raid at Mar-a-Lago. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to get the crowd going. And no reaction from the crowd at all. He started speaking. They were excited to see him. They were super excited for the plane to pull up. There was about, some people said 7,000 people. Some people said 10,000. I'd gone to a John Fetterman rally a couple of days ago that had 7,500 people. There were more people at this thing than there were at the Fetterman rally. So I think it was probably closer to 10. People have been waiting for 5 hours, super excited. And they were happy to see the plane pull up. They were happy to see him get off. And then they sat down. They sat down in their chairs. It was something I had never seen in a Trump rally. And he just complained about himself for 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, he read the speech he was supposed to give quickly. And people started leaving right away. Right? Like even while he was like at the beginning of his speech, they're just not into it.
How much of his base, if you look at his base as everyone who voted for him in 2016, ranging from the crazy, pedophile people to, the doctor who just wants to pay less taxes. How much of that base do you think he's lost? Is it enough to move a needle going forward?
It's anecdotal, but it does feel like that to me when I've talked to people that support, and that's the great thing about the job I have now is like you go to, I get to spend time going to a lot of red parts of the country and, talking to people there. I think what people are looking for in this kind of leadership is someone who is speaking about the concerns that they have and is able to, I think that is what he was good at in 2016, right? He was good at, like, he had a lot of grievances. He was good at making them the grievances that people had in their own lives, feeling left out, not respected. And what he's doing now is he's just talking about himself and he's not talking about them at all. And
selling cards. I mean, that's just bonkers.
Selling cards, it doesn't seem to be, it just doesn't seem to be resonating. There's one guy I talked to in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district that named Michael, who was pretty thoughtful about this stuff. And I think it's illuminating people who don't spend a lot of time talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene supporters to hear what he had to say, which was, I asked him about her and he's like, I do support her. And just like, and most people I talked to in her district, he was like, I don't love everything about her. I don't love all of it. Some of it's too much. I get it. He's like, but you people just pick at the things that, she says that you don't like. And he said, I asked about when she got stripped of her committee assignments. And he said, I felt like when that happened, I felt like I didn't have a voice. I felt like I didn't matter. He said, I drive a truck for a living. She's a smart lady. She went to college. She had a business. And if the Democrats are going to do that to her, what must they think of somebody like me?
Right. Well, that's a valid point from a voter's perspective. What do you think?
So it's like, that is like, but Trump's not tapping into that anymore.
No.
So that's why I feel like it's not going to survive.
What do you think is going to happen in the House? Speaking of Madge and her influence, and do you think is McCarthy, in your opinion, going to eke out enough votes, which really would be irrelevant because she seems like she would be pulling the strings anyway if that happened. But it's going to be chaotic, right? For 2 years, a lot of chaos ahead of us.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He doesn't even have a backup plan, right? His only plan, he says, like, only Kevin, okay, right? That's their strategy. Only Kevin can win, and they have buttons that say that. And that is, I remember when only Jeb could win, right? I'm old enough to remember that. And so I think it could be true chaos. I think it's probably true that no one else could get 218 votes. It doesn't mean that McCarthy can. It still doesn't mean that he can do it, right? So I think January 3rd, when they come back in and they have to have this vote about whether or not he's actually going to be this speaker, that could be a real shit show. Like, that could really not work out. And then I think he's going to have an incredibly difficult time, for the next 2 years, and John Boehner and Paul Ryan did not have a lot of success in managing that caucus when they had a majority and trying to get things done when they had a majority. And even when Trump was in office. And I think Kevin McCarthy is going to have an even harder time. And they're, the thing that they can do is investigate. And I think that is going to backfire big time with the American public, like it did on Benghazi, it did with Clinton's impeachment. And I've seen this movie twice before, in '94 and in 2010 when the Republicans took over the House, and both times it ended up with Democratic presidents being reelected.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't see any reason why that doesn't happen again.
So do you
the most likely thing to happen.
Is the GOP dead or dying, or is this just like a temporary illness?
I don't know. It surprised. I think it was broken before Trump. I think that they had for a long time had been courting voters that had didn't align. They didn't align with their policies, right? Policies of like not a lot of spending and lower taxes for rich people, let a lot of, have a history of letting racism and homophobia and misogyny play a role in their politics. And it became a combustible mix that blew up in their face in 2016. And, Trump kind of papered over those problems. And now now they're really having to face them. And you can see like they had a historically bad midterms. I don't think we appreciate just how bad it was. Mm-hmm. 1934 is the last time this happened. Mm-hmm. 1934. There were 96 senators. The last time a party in power picked up a Senate seat in the first presidential midterm, there were only 96 senators. That is like how big a deal. So it's like what Trump unleashed, but I don't think it's right to say quite that, like for our discussion about 2016, what this like roiling in America unleashed in the country is as big a force as the Great Depression, right? Like it is as big a force as that. I thought the Republican Party was dead. The fact that enough people weirdly voted for Democrats makes me think, maybe Liz Cheney's got a chance at like taking this party back over the long term. But I think what's more likely to happen is something else. Is it just takes a long time it takes another 10 years or so to like weed out these.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of 24, you mentioned Cheney. Yeah, everybody's obviously talking about DeSantis. He's the heir apparent. He's the new kid in town who's going to grab all the Trump people because he's smarter and blah, blah, blah. But, and we were talking about this in the room before the show started today. 2 years is a long time, between now and the election. And I'm really interested in your perspective as a strategist, because we've seen this happen so many times in history where like the person who's like the star at the beginning of the race is nowhere near the front at the end of the race. Like, are there people like Youngkin and Sununu, others who no one's really talking about all that much right now because DeSantis is getting all the juice, but what do you think is going to happen ultimately? Like, we're not even sure DeSantis is going to enter the race. He might just be a giant chump who's afraid to take on Trump, right? There's that possibility. So what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah,
who do you think might actually become the nominee that no one's really talking about all that much now?
I think you're right that it's 2 years out. It's never the issue that animates the midterms it's usually not the issue that animates the presidential primaries. So to think that because by the way, DeSantis is sort of like own the libs strategy that got him reelected in Florida worked absolutely nowhere and no other state in 2022. So I do have doubts. I I do have doubts about him. He is popular, I'll tell you. Like at Trump rallies, people, Trump criticized Ron DeSantis once at a Trump rally, called him Ron DeSanctimonious. He never did it again because it got no reaction because people like Ron DeSantis. So it depends on how, I don't know. It depends on how many there are. I think somebody like Youngkin is more likely to be acceptable than somebody like Cheney or my governor, Larry Hogan, who was another never Trump Republican, or Asa Hutchinson, another not quite never Trump Republican, but another more conventional Republican who may also run. There's and I think the never Trump people are going to have a hard time finding majority. The people who try to have it both ways, which is not awesome, like Glenn Youngkin, try to be like snuggly to Trump when he needs to be and distance him when he doesn't. They may have a better shot, but it's still like when you look at the Republican primary process, it seems the process itself seems likely to produce a nominee that kind of like the nominees in 2022 had been moved so far to the right that they were unpalatable to the public. So I'm relatively bullish on 24.
And what about Biden? I mean, I know this week there's been a lot of talk that he's reinvigorated. His polling is way up as Trump's is cratering. His wife, Jill, made some statements that got people excited about her support for another run. I think he's one of the most successful, productive presidents in history. I don't get when fellow Democrats are, saying, "Oh, he should step aside." Like, to me, that's the craziest talk ever. But I don't.
It's very Democrat, though. It's very Democrat.
Well, we've always been our own worst enemies, haven't we?
It's like we've read, but also thanks to the Democrats fronting and paying attention to rules and abiding by rules and norms, we still have a republic. So I'm okay with it.
Well, it's funny. I had Stuart Stevens on here a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Democrats messaging. Everybody's always saying, "Oh, the Democrats' messaging is so horrible. We can't speak like Republicans." And he said, if we just look at the last elections for like the last 4 years or whatever, like the messaging has worked, right? Like Democrats actually are doing what and saying what needs to be said to win, and winning is that's all that matters.
Trump made Democrats great.
Donald
Trump made Democrats great.
Again. He made them great again.
He made them great again because we have had to produce fantastic candidates that and all the groups have had to work together and build up new infrastructure around voting and protecting the vote and suing people around the vote and getting new laws passed, and they have created a democratic machine like I have never seen before. So
look,
that is all because of Donald Trump.
I wrote something years ago that said ultimately we're going to look back on the Trump presidency, and that aside from talking about what we just talked about, that he also united some Democrats and Republicans. That's going to be his legacy. That people like you and me, when are we on the same side as Bill Kristol and folks like that, and Stuart Stevens and Rick Smith, Rick Wilson? I mean, we were on the same side. Liz Cheney is stumping for She was stumping for Democrats. I mean, who could have predicted that, right? So my last question to you is the second part
about Biden running. I'm just not sure. Everybody took his answer the day after the election to be like, "Oh, he's definitely running," and he put a lot of caveats around that. He put a lot of, "I'm going to talk to my family. I'm going to," So I think he will do it. But I'm not sure.
But as a strategist, you've heard before the same thing as I've heard, which is like once somebody gets in the Oval Office, they never want to leave, right? Once you run for president, you never want to not run for president. The second part of our getting into someone's soul is music. Music is a window into people's soul. So I want to know, who are your top 5 musical artists of all time? Top 5.
Stevie Nicks, Lucinda Williams, Jason Isbell.
All right.
Very, very into Jason. that's, last 10 years, most important artists. And that's what I listen to on repeat when I'm writing books or articles. Springsteen. And number 5, Rustin Kelly. Rustin, no, you've never heard of Rustin Kelly, right?
No, I haven't. There's a lot that people mention on this podcast when I ask that question that I have not heard of.
Fantastic. He's relatively new. Relatively new. I like a Lyft driver in Nashville. I was driving me to the Ryman to see Jason Isbell, and I was like, if you like Jason, you gotta listen to this guy. He's known, unfortunately, he's most known as Casey Musgrave's ex-husband.
Okay.
But phenomenal songwriter too.
That's a good list.
It is a very big deal in my life. I spend a lot of time traveling to cities I want to go to just to see shows that I want to see.
That's awesome. And it's great that, we're back at a place where we can see live music, which is very important.
Yeah.
Jennifer, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time.
Pleasure.
I'm a big fan. Keep doing the work you do. And love
thanks.
that
the
Circus.
Candy store, man. I want to come. I want to get this there.
I'm dead serious. So you've spread it around.
Yeah, no, I am too. That sounds very cool. That sounds very Circus.
We have coffees. We have pastries and baked goods and all kinds of stuff. You guys can sit around, chew the fat, and chew some good, tasty stuff. Yeah. All right. Thanks for being with us.
Okay. My pleasure.
So there you have it. Episode 29 in the can. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So leave us a message at 845-307-7446. Email us at backroomandy@gmail.com or tweet to me at Andy Ostroy. And please leave a review if you like the podcast. Those things are important. I want to thank my co-producer, engineer, and editor, Maddie Rosenberg, associate producer, Jen Hamoud, Cricket Langell for our artwork, Andy Hollander for our kick-ass music, Patricia Wind and the Epicurean for the Backroom Studio, and a big thank you again to our guest, Jennifer Palmieri. So keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great week.